Hi, thank you for joining us today to learn more about how Copilot Studio and Azure AI Foundry can work better together to create custom line of business solutions. I'll go ahead and break down each of these topics today as we dive deeper into this subject. To get started, I want to talk about the evolving state of AI because it's really come a long way over the last several years. For most of us, we first started using AI to empower individuals using a secure in-house GPT that took many different forms, but in most instances, that was using tools like Microsoft's OpenAI service in Azure. From there, we saw organizations adopt AI assistants within their applications. For a lot of us, we saw that as Microsoft 365 Copilot or Dynamics 365 Copilot. Looking forward, we're starting to see AI assisted workflows in the form of agentic AI that allows these digital agents to work alongside humans to drive specific business outcomes. And then, even beyond that, we're going to start to see organizations restructure how they deliver on a daily basis in a very dynamic way. We know that Copilot is becoming the UI for AI. And what that really means is behind the scenes, regardless of how you create agentic solutions to drive business processes, you'll have the ability to create a rich, centralized user experience where you can pull all of those various components together. So whether you're creating agents in SharePoint, agents in Agent Builder Lite, or agents in Copilot Studio, data agents in Fabric, or agents in Azure AI Foundry, we know that Copilot Chat becomes the UI, the user interface for everyone to get to those things. Meanwhile, you have the ability as an administrator to govern, manage, monitor, secure, and measure the usage of those agents in a centralized way. And really, this slide is meant to visualize how impactful that can be, right? So picture a scenario where you've invested in the creation of agents, you publish it once to the centralized platform known as Copilot Chat, and then that automatically becomes accessible in many different places, whether it's in the web browser, Teams, your desktop, your Office products, or even the mobile app. Once again, those agents become accessible and meet you where you work, which is really powerful. So for those who are not familiar with agents, there's really a spectrum of agents. On the left-hand side, they can do simple things like retrieve information as a user is interacting with it from a knowledge source of some kind. On the right-hand side, agents can work fully autonomously and create complete workflows and processes behind the scenes. Here's just a visual of the various tools you can use to create those agents. On the left-hand side, very simple plug-and-play agent builder. All the way to the right, the ability to use the Azure AI Studio and the Foundry to create really custom solutions. So let's break that down further. Copilot Studio, once again, is the low-code solution that allows you to pull in various components to create an agent. You can simply click to add various knowledge sources, both natively to Microsoft and outside of Microsoft. You can provide it with various skills and tools that it can automatically incorporate into its decision-making process. And then you can program topics, basically saying, hey, if a user is asking about this particular topic, let's create more of a structured outcome within this workflow process so that we have a little bit more of a deterministic outcome or result. There you can pull in various foundational models. We know that a lot of the GPT models are available today. We're seeing increasingly the accessibility of other models become available as a foundation to these solutions. And then more importantly, the evolution of agent-to-agent orchestration is maturing, right? So you create one agent with a set of skills and knowledge sources, allowing that to talk to another agent with a different set of skills and knowledge sources can really create a powerful end-to-end solution. But let's say the low-code capabilities don't fully provide you with what you need. Maybe you need to customize it specifically to your business processes, or maybe you're trying to get a competitive edge through the customization. That's where the Azure AI Foundry comes in. You have a full suite of development tools and resources on the left-hand side. You can have models that are very specific to a function, task, or industry that you're looking for. You can pull in a breadth of services that are available to you within the Azure ecosystem. And then you can really customize and fine tune the results, putting in the necessary governance and safety controls and monitoring that you think is appropriate for your organization. And really what that means is that these two things work better together, right? So allow for that speed and innovation in Copilot Studio, and then go into the Azure AI Foundry to really push it over the edge. And that become really powerful when you combine the greatest models, the greatest services to help drive that business transformation. So next I want to segue into a live demo just to illustrate what some of these concepts look like. And to get started, what I did as a baseline for this demo was I went to the Microsoft Adoption website, where if you haven't been here before, they have a ton of great resources, but in particular, I was looking at the agent templates and agent examples that I could easily get started with. In this demo, I decided to use the statement of work creator, where it helped me get that initial solution set up. So I'll go ahead and take a quick peek at what's over here. As we said before, this is sort of the landing page to creating an agent in Copilot Studio. Here you provide overview information of what it does basically, and that helps tell the agent how to operate. You can add various knowledge sources, various tools and connections. You can call other agents from it, and then once again have structured topics or conversations within it that you have more control over. And then as an administrator, you can publish it to multiple channels and then see the activity and measure the impact of what's going on in there. The instructions are what's key though, right? So out of this base solution, here we're telling it to create a statement of work agent with some guidelines. And what it's going to do is it's going to say, hey, this agent can complete a series of skills, and under each skill, it will have step-by-step instructions of what to do. For the purposes of this demo, we'll just go through the first skill of writing a new statement of work, where it's going to go ahead and ask the title, the purpose, and the objectives of the statement of work, create a defined scope with tasks and deliverables, build out a timeline based off of the information you provide it, and then create sort of the breakdown of billing and resources that might go into this. And you can see some of the other skills as well here too. What that looks like in practice, as I look at the Activity Explorer, I've run this prior to this demo, we can see here that I told it I wanted to create a statement of work. Then I came in and I provided the title, the purpose, and objectives, and that was all the information I had to curate prior to using this agent. Then I went ahead and told it that I wanted to set a start date of January 1st, and I wanted it to take about 8 weeks. Then I told it what personnel was involved in the project so that it knew exactly, based off of my rates, what the budget should be for this project, and it starts to break it down further here in the response. And then I went ahead and pieced all of that together and created a final statement of work. So if you look at all these details here, we have the overview, the scope, task breakdown, deliverables, timeline, resources, and budget, and then some of the contract terms that might go with a typical statement of work here. So you can see here, just even with the timestamps, in under a minute, I was able to create a pretty robust statement of work. And even if I had to go ahead and make some adjustments, that saved a significant amount of time. But let's say, hey, we're using an older model that might not help you solve your problem. In this particular example, we're trying to perform a project around generating R&D tax credits for a manufacturing customer. And we know that the tax laws are changing frequently, or maybe there's some complex nuances to it. So what we may want to do is come into the Azure AI Foundry, which is this portal that you're looking at here, and maybe we want to use a newer model. And what's nice about the Azure AI Foundry is that there's a whole catalog of models to choose from. If you really needed to filter by your purpose or your task, you can go ahead and do that here. For our purposes, we'll just simply select our GPT-5 mini model for us to use, which I've done ahead of time. What's nice about the Foundry is it creates a chat playground for you. So just for testing purposes, I asked it to summarize the latest R&D tax credits for 2025. Wanted me to confirm what jurisdiction this was for. I said the United States Federal Tax Code, and I'm able to see some of the information that it has, which is really powerful. So let's say I did that. Maybe I want to do some fine tuning. Maybe I want to create some test cases using the evaluation Maybe I want to add additional guardrails and governance controls, and maybe even some logging and analytics to this as well. The Foundry is really the place to do that, and that's really powerful. So now I have this really powerful resource in my hands. I want to incorporate that into my low-code solution. So what I do is I come in here and I add a tool. And the way you add these AI models from the Foundry is by creating a prompt. And it's really the instructions that you provide here that allow it to know when to use this specific model compared to the other models. And the way you can pull that in is simply by adding a new model from the AI Foundry, and it'll just go ahead and ask you for that connection information, which is available in the actual AI Foundry portal. But let's assume you've established that connection. You can choose that model, give it the instructions, and create that tool. From within your solution, though, it's really easy to use. So if I look at the instructions, I said, okay, create the project scope with the various tasks and deliverables. Maybe I want to use my fine-tuned model instead of the default 4.0 model above. So I'll go ahead and use that // It's going to go ahead and suggest some tools. And I'll go ahead and select the IRS Research and Development Tax Credit prompt tool that I created a moment ago. From there, it's going to recognize that there's a match against how this tool was set up, and then it'll start to use that 5.0 mini model instead of the 4.0 model. What's nice, though, is if you want to bypass the orchestration, you want to have more of a deterministic outcome, you can use this concept of topics. So in certain situations, when it is able to match against the topic description, you can then create a very structured flow and outcome, and even control the output of what gets presented back to the users. And then let's say in a different format, maybe you don't want to use a base model that's fine-tuned. Maybe you want to use your own index. Azure AI Foundry allows you to create a custom Azure search index where you're able to upload your own files. Maybe you have PDFs from the IRS website. Maybe you have other statements of work or files that document all of your services. You can create your own search index connected as a knowledge source into Copilot Studio and do all of the training and fine-tuning within that index and that semantic model, and then just easily make it available to your end users just with a click of a button once they're provided the right input information. And from there, Copilot Studio does the rest. So if I flip back here just to close out, we know that there's so many use cases for these tools, whether you're trying to drive individual value, meet team or departmental level KPIs, or drive top line revenue, reduce costs, improve margins. There's many ways to impact an organization. And I already mentioned this tax R&D use case, but there's a breadth of use cases in which these things can be applied. And feel free to look over this list and help gather some inspiration of what you may be looking to accomplish with some of these tools. The world of agentic AI and agent orchestration is going to really transform the way in which we work. Thank you.